Welcome back to the case study of Linux system. We were discussing about the scheduling in our previous session. Continuing further with the scheduling. So priorities and based on the time slice length. Consider this situation over here. We have something called real-time task and other task. In general, real-time task should be given highest priority, and other tasks can be given lowest priority based on the task. So in general, real-time tasks may consume up to 200 microseconds, and other tasks may be the lowest level priority with 10 microseconds. So here we have a table. The first column we have a numeric priority, relative priority in the time quantum. So with respect to the scheduling part, we supposed to provide the system supposed to provide highest priority for the real-time tasks. So now coming to the highest priority, numerically suppose start from 0. So if you consider as an ascending order of numbering scheme, then numeric priority with the number 0, which is having highest priority. So when we say highest priority, which is nothing but real-time task, it should be served at that particular moment only. So 0 is the topmost, next 1, 2, 3, and so on. So it should be the numerical ascending order. Based on that, may give priority numbers. So the topmost value or highest value in that scheme, so that will be having lowest relative priority. So say in this particular example, the 140 numeric priority is 140 is nothing but it is having lowest priority, which is not the topmost task that should be executed immediately. So it may be taken some time or may be executed after completing all those real-time tasks. So this can be done at any time. So time quantum may be 10 milliseconds. This is how the relationship between priorities and time slice length can be worked out. So we need to remember with respect to Linux environment, the topmost priority or highest priority is given for real-time tasks, and lower priority, lowest privileges can be given for other tasks, which is uh, the not in the emergency level or not in the real-time level, so that it can be executed bit later on. That is how is time has been kept for those lower priority tasks. Going further, say with respect to priority 0, we don't know the number of tasks at that particular moment. So how it can be indexed? Please follow my cursor. So list of tasks indexed by the priority. So active array, this is the number of priorities which is active at this particular moment. Consider only this particular part for time being. So have a priority 0. So with respect to priority 0, as we know, priority 0 represents highest priority, nothing but it is a real-time situation that should be executed. So in this particular priority, at the same time, we may have number of tasks which may be listed out. Coming to this number of tasks, so picking up the task, again, we may follow different algorithm over here by providing scheduling and by selecting. Say under 0th priority, we may have 2 tasks simultaneously. These 2 tasks must be executed at the same time. And secondly, priority 1, second most priority, which is having 3 tasks should be executed, or 3 tasks having same priority level, priority 1, and so on. This is how the active array or list of tasks is maintained or indexed in the machine. So we don't know or may not, or we may not be knowing. There may be only one task at that particular moment, or there may be n number of tasks with the same priority. So based on the service, it will be decided. Then we have another set of array, another set of values, which is expired array. For example, with the priority 0, we had 3 tasks that should be completed with the highest priority. But the CPU is not able to serve for all these tasks. So now coming to the previous diagram, each topmost will be given with the time quantum 200 millisecond. So within that 200 millisecond, if that particular task has not completed or a task has not served anything, then automatically that particular tasks will be expired because it will be given with the time limit, time quantum. So similarly, at the same time, with respect to the next priority level, in that first priority level, if there is no tasks are served, at that moment automatically it moves to the expiry. For example, each time limit may be extending more than 200, but the allocation may be provided with that particular situation only. So that's why within that particular given time periods, if it is not served at all, then it is by default it is moving to for a expire array. That's how tasks are handled. The tasks are listed and indexed by the priority level. Then we have process scheduling. With respect to Linux, it uses 2 process scheduling algorithms. One is time sharing and another one is real time algorithm. With respect to time sharing algorithm, which is for fair preemptive scheduling between multiple processes, which is fair preemptive scheduling between multiple processes. That is time sharing. Second one is real time algorithm. The real time algorithm for tasks where absolute priorities are more important than fairness. Based on the priority, the real time algorithm is selected. So how to select this one? How to prefer? That is, a process scheduling class defines which algorithm to apply. So based on the class of process scheduling, the algorithm has been chosen. Continuing further under this process scheduling, so we may have, Linux may have, can implement FIFO, first in, first out, and round robin real scheduling classes. First in, first out, based on the entry into the table, list of indexes, which is with the priority level and tasks to be continued. Either first in, first out, based on the entry, whoever comes first, that will be served first. That is first in, first out. And round robin. Round robin in the sense equal time quantum can be given for all. So once the time quantum is given, automatically when the time quantum is over, automatically it moves to the next task and so on. That is with respect to real-time scheduling. So with respect to these both cases, each process has a priority in addition to its scheduling class. What is that priority part? For each time, the scheduler runs the process with the highest priority. And when we have more number of processes, which is having equal priority, when we have more number of tasks should be completed with equal priority, then it runs the process waiting the longest, or whoever came entered first, whoever had waiting time more, that will be executed first, served first. On the other hand, FIFO, first in, first out process continue to run until they either exit or block. And a round robin process will be preempted after a while and move to the end of the scheduling queue. So that round robin process of equal priority automatically time share between themselves. This is what we discussed. So each task may be given with the time quantum. The process scheduler will give the task for each individual processes, schedules the job, When time quantum is over, the next will come to picture, and this particular round robin process will be continued. Coming to the multiprocessing part, our Linux supports symmetric multiprocessing. More number of processes can be executed simultaneously, or programs by multiple processors which shares a common OS. Or on the other hand, we can say tightly coupled, because it's supposed to share common operating system and memory. On the other hand, it will share memory and the IO bus, or we can say data path. One thing supposed to remember, when there is a symmetric multiprocessing task, it is nothing but single copy of the OS is in charge for all the processors. All the processor should look after for the same single copy of the operating system, which may involve multiple or multi-processor computer hardware. It may support symmetric multiprocessing hardware, SMP hardware, and software architecture, where two or more identical processors are connected to a single in the sense shared memory, single memory or shared main memory, which has full access. That is what symmetric multiprocessing is. It supports this multiprocessing architecture in which, irrespective of the processors, single operating system, single memory, main memory can be shared with all. That is Linux 2.0. The first Linux kernel to support SMP hardware. So what we can expect? Separate processes or threads can execute in parallel. There will be separate processes to look after and separate threads to look after and can execute in parallel. On the other hand, we can say parallel programming. Coming to memory management. So Linux physical memory management system, which deal with the allocating and freeing pages, groups of pages, and small blocks of memory. When we say memory management, is nothing but allocation, deallocation, or freeing up, reallocation, or reusage of what? Memory blocks of memory. So which has additional mechanisms for handling virtual memory mapped into the address space of running processes. So when we say a separate mechanism or additional mechanism to handle virtual memory, it's nothing but we're supposed to have a different concept to handle with this virtual memory. So whenever there is a need, there should be an adoption in such a way that you can extend, can shrink, can use, can utilize, can improve. So to do with this particular exercise, the memory should be splitted into three different zones due to hardware characteristics. So what are those zones? So we are considering x86 processor. We have DMA, we have normal, we have high memory management. So three zones can be splitted up. Three zones can be designated. So with respect to zone, the first we have zone DMA, direct memory access. So this particular zone DMA or DMA zone, direct memory access setup, can be given with less than 16 MB of size, which is helpful in loading immediate access for the memory to deal with direct memory access, less than 16 MB of space. Coming to the normal zone, 16 to 896 MB of physical memory can be allocated. Another zone with highest or high memory management, which is having more than 896 MB of physical space, physical memory address. So how it can be divided? Please have a look into this particular diagram. 16 KB can be divided into equal part 8 KB and 8 KB, and individual 8 KB can be split into 4 KB each. So based on this particular criteria, the zone level has been splitted up based on the hardware characteristic. So once we have this kind of splits, so we is supposed to manage with the physical memory. The physical memory can be managed using a page allocator. So page allocator's job is to allocate physical page, and whenever there is a known, whenever the task is over, the page allocator should free up all those physical pages. So it can allocate ranges of physically contiguous pages on request if there is a need. So one thing is supposed to remember, so based on whatever the split up we made, based on the memory, based on the memory and using hardware characteristics, so that is splitting up. So this splitted area can be allocated via page allocator. So page allocator's job is to allocate and free up all physical pages. And when there is a requirement, page allocator's job is to allocate continuous memory, continuous physical page. The allocator uses buddy heap algorithm. Allocator, that is page allocator, uses buddy heap algorithm to keep track of all these page allocations or page reallocations, freeing up all the pages and providing contiguous pages if there is any need. So to handle with this allocator, I make use of buddy heap algorithm. This buddy heap algorithm divides memory into partitions. That is what we saw previously, and satisfies a memory request as suitably as possible. So based on the request, say for example, if you consider, go back to previous diagram over here, consider there is a need of a 10 KB of memory for a particular program to be run. So the buddy heap algorithm, which is implemented via the page allocator. Page allocator first allocates 8 KB, first allocates 8 KB of space. So 8 KB is ready. Then, however, the program needed 10 KB. So there should be a need of another 2 KB. So the 2 KB may be borrowed from this, so that there will be continuous, the page is continuous memory allocation. So this is decided by, handled by buddy heap algorithm. So buddy heap algorithm, which will divide or partition the memory to satisfy the need of a memory request. So the memory request is as suitable as possible. In this case, if it is a equal distribution, 8 KB plus 4 KB may be allocated. So it is not the permanent solution, but for immediate requirement. So how to do with that? Each allocatable memory region is paired with an adjacent partner. Then, whenever two allocated partner regions are both freed up, they are combined to form a larger region. If small memory request cannot be satisfied by allocating an existing small free region, then a larger free region will be subdivided into two partners to satisfy the request. This is what we saw as an buddy heap algorithm. So we saw an example. 10 KB of space is required for an execution. So 8 KB is readily available. Another 2 KB is not at all available. So now considering buddy heap algorithm, it found that this 4 KB is free now. From this 4 KB, 2 KB may be given after dividing 4 KB into 2 KB each. Because Buddy Heap algorithm's first task is to split the memory into equal parts. So 4 KB can be divided into 2 KB each. So this particular 4 KB can divide into 2 KB each. So one 2 KB may be allocated with this particular allocated with this particular 8 KB to have a continuous memory. So there is a task of Buddy Heap algorithm. So this Buddy Heap algorithm used by the allocator. Next, the memory allocations in the Linux kernel occur either statically. So that means there may be a possibility of automated allocation or dynamic. So dynamic, most of the time dynamic allocation happens via with the page allocator, because if there is a need like this, like the example what we discussed, in that case it should be dynamic allocation. On the other hand, it may make use of slab allocator for kernel memory as well. So here you can see the example. So consider as an example over here, we have kernel objects, which is of 3 KB and 7 KB objects. We have sufficient cache memory. Please follow my cursor. So these 3 KB objects are loaded in the cache memory like this. So this particular cache memory, however, we collected from the main memory itself. The main memory should have a memory table, nothing which is having physical contiguous pages. So these particular slabs are located over here. So now consider here is a dashed line. So this particular cache is located from this particular physical contiguous page. This particular cache is from this one. So at the end, if there is a need, we can borrow the memory from this particular area as well if there is a need. So this is by the help of Buddy Heap, because we already have 3 KB object size, 3 KB sized space. We already have 7 KB size. So if there is a need of 10 KB, then 7 KB may be borrowed from this, 3 KB may be borrowed from this. Okay, that's how this particular slab allocator works. The slab allocator for kernel memory if there is a need. So any clarification, any doubt? Please get back to me. Okay. Continuing further, the virtual memory. So virtual memory system maintains the address space visible to each processor, saying that separates address space. It creates a page of virtual memory on demand and manages the loading of those pages from disk or their swapping back out to disk as required. For example, in general, we can take an example. So while installing your operating system initially, the initial stages, whenever you buy a new machine, new hard disk, you fitted everything, hardwares are ready, you're supposed to load your operating system into your machine. So immediately while you're trying to load, initially you're supposed to format your disk based on your OS and based on your file system. You may select FAT32, you may select NTFS, you may select any other file distribution system mechanism for a partitioning. So once partition is done, during the partition itself, you can set up this virtual memory. So this virtual memory will be having separate address space. So that address space is visible to each other processes. Consider there is a, say for example, you have a 500 GB hard disk HDD. So while installing OS, you may be kept around 6 MB of virtual memory. So this 6 MB, if whenever there is a need, you may shrink it. Whenever there is a need, you may involve few more memory space from the existing, or you may collect those memory whenever you need it. There's something like swapping whenever there is a need or whenever there is a demand. So to do this exercise, a VM manager maintains two separate views of a process address space. One is logical view and another one is physical view. So logical view, which describes instructions concerning the layout of the address space, how that address should be maintained. Again, when we say address space is having different regions, whether it is a continuous, non-overlapping, page alignment, subset, all those comes into picture. That is logical. When we say physical view, the address space which is stored in the hardware page tables for the processes. With respect to logical view, all these address space consists of continuous page aligned subset of the address space. And coming to the physical view, each address space which is stored in the hardware page tables for the processes. And based on this particular capacity, the virtual memory regions are characterized by the backing store and regions reaction. So backing store in the sense, when there is a need from where the pages for a region has come, or to which the regions has to be backed up by a file. Say for example, demand 0 memory and there is a demand memory. When there is a no need of virtual memory for a particular task to be executed, then the backing store may be kept blank, or it may be pages for a particular region has come. Then second part is region's reaction to writes. So this writes in the sense either page sharing or copy on write. Page sharing in the sense, for example, if there is a need for say we have seen in the previous example, there is a 10 KB need in this particular setup, 7 KB borrowed from this, 3 KB may be borrowed from this particular kind of setup. Similarly, if we apply that particular logic over here, that particular page sharing can be handled via this. And copy on write during an execution, if there is a need to copy during writing up any file to maintain a copy, so then the virtual memory regions might be used. But in general, the kernel creates a new virtual address space. So when it will create, when a process runs a new program with the exec system call, with the execute system call exec. So at that time, the kernel creates a new virtual address space. Second is upon creation of new process by the fork system call. So only in these two cases, a new virtual address space has been created. One is when running a new program using exec execute exec system call. Second one is whenever a new process has been originated using fork system call fork. So these are the two reasons or two way to create a new virtual address space by the kernel. During execution of a new program, the process is given a new, or on the other hand, blank or empty virtual address space, because when it is a new, it should be a blank or empty virtual address space. And if there is a continuous, if there is a routine, then there should be a continuous address space might have been needed. Then there should be an addition. There should be a need of allocating further more space for the current situation, for the current address space. So that is one part. Second part is why creating a new process with the fork, which involves creating complete copy of existing process. Nothing but we discuss something like inheritance, creating parent copy. On the other hand, it copies parent processes virtual memory address descriptors. Then creates a new set of page tables for the child. Same thing, whatever the fields are occupied by the parent, all those fields are copied for the child as well. Then the parents page tables are copied directly into the child's, because it is inheritance property with reference count of each page covered being incremented, whether there is a use or non-use. Whatever the parent has used, all those fields must be copied. And once the fork is ready, once the new process has been created, then both parent and child will share same physical page because there is a same copy, no? When there is a same copy, automatically it will be shared the same by the same physical pages of memory in their address space. And the VM paging system relocates pages of memory from physical memory out to disk when memory is needed for something else. This is something like if there is a need, of virtual memory for immediate purpose as a buffer. So we can have a paging system, virtual memory paging system, which can reallocate pages of memory from physical memory to the disk. For example, if you are trying to install a new application which needed higher RAM capability, so during installation, you may take the help of this virtual memory. Or whenever you use a particular application which consumes more main memory, at that time you can increase this virtual memory or you can increase the size of this virtual memory by grabbing your main memory. That is how it works, reallocation of pages of memory. But the virtual memory paging system can have two sections. One is page out policy algorithm and paging mechanism. So this page out policy algorithm will decide which pages to write out to disk and when. That is what the example I gave. So whenever there is a need during runtime or whenever there is a need during installation of any application, if you need a virtual memory a little bit more for the easier installation or easier usage, then we may increase the page size. That is how it can be written to the disk. That is decided by the page out policy algorithm. And to do with that, we need to have a paging mechanism. So this paging mechanism actually carries out the transfer of pages, transfer of address, carry over with the address, carry over with the page, to and fro. When there is a need, it should be allocated. When there is no need, at that time, it should be get back those, roll backing. So these things can be handled by this VM paging system. So for this kind of exercise, the Linux kernel reserves a constant architecture dependent region of the virtual address space of every process for its own internal use. So to do with this paging mechanism, allocation, deallocation, when there is a need, all these kind of thing should have a architecture dependent region of virtual address space. For this reason, it should contain virtual memory area contain two regions. One is static and is reserved section. The static area which has a page table which references to every available physical page of memory system. Something like a lookup table which is having all the address of applications which utilizes these particular pages, the static. Because till you uninstall that particular application from your machine, still the same table with the same address has been maintained. And you're supposed to have a reserved section as well. So this reserved section is not at all reserved for any specific purpose. But if there is a need for page table entry, then it can be modified to point to any other areas of memory. It is reserved. For example, if there is 6 MB is reserved for this virtual memory, 4 MB you can have a static virtual memory. So out of that 2 MB can be reserved for reserved section, can be treated as reserved section, so that you can you can utilize this 2 KB for any further entries, vegetable entries and modifications. So how executing and loading user programs can happen? So Linux maintains a table of functions for loading programs. It gives each function the opportunity to try loading the given file when an exec system call is made. So now, as we know, when a particular program should be loaded, Each program has been given with the name, say file name. So that file name is stored in any one of the location of your computer, say hard disk location, any one drive. In that particular drive, based on the folder you may have kept in the file. So this particular entire path is maintained by a table. Whenever you want to load that particular program via as an application, the Linux checks with its table to load that particular program, saying that consider as a situation you have written a C program that you kept in bin folder of Turbo C. So you're supposed to run a Turbo C program. So you created a program, say hello world, you wanted to display hello world. You saved as hello.c. So using the Turbo C compiler, out of that blue screen as well known, you are trying to open that particular program which you have written in a previous day. So now you click on file and then load. Automatically the path in the backend directs to that particular folder. That is what the system call is. System call try to loads the particular given file when that ex system call is made. So system call is loading, load the particular file, load hello.c. So this particular kind of setup of loading programs and this has been maintained by the Linux. So whenever you want to load that particular program, automatically using that load button, you may click it option, that particular program will be loaded. So this thing happen via using the system call, which is made by using that particular tool that is in the backend, nothing but a load as a system call. So that system call has exec. So executing what we executed, load system call has been executed. Then the registration of multiple loader routines allows Linux to support both ELF and A.out binary formats. So now coming to the supporting part, when we say this kind of loaders, multiple loaders if we had we have two kinds or two uh, specific kind of approaches for both multiple loader routines can be allowed with the Linux. So that is ELF and A.out binary format. So what is that ELF? So ELF is nothing but a particular format which allows the Linux machine to do with the tasks. So in general, it is nothing but executable and linkable format. ELF in the sense executable and linkable format. So it is a common standard file format for all the executable files. We can say exe file. In general, with respect to Linux environment, we use the term ELF, executable and linkable format, ELF format, which is common standard file format for all the executable files. All the executable files, all the object codes or shared libraries, or we may say core dumps sometimes as well. Sometimes it is also called, or previous terminology, we may say it is something like extensible linking format. It is flexible, extensible, and cross-platform. So these type of files also, binary format also has been supported by this Linux. Another one is A.out. It is again a file format used in the older versions of Unix operating systems for executables. Same thing for executables, object codes, shared libraries, all those things. So in general, this A.out we use to convert from assembler to the interpreter. to convert assembler or to convert object file to exe file to get the output in the form of binary sheet. On the other hand, all these ELF or A.out extensible linking or executable linking file with this A.out as well. So that has been mapped into virtual memory. So only when a program tries to access a given page will a page fault result in that page being loaded into physical memory. So that is during an execution of a program, if there is a mismatch in this particular file extensions, there will result in a page fault. So an ELF format binary file consists of a header followed by several page aligned sections. The ELF loader works by reading the header and mapping the sections of the file into separate regions of virtual memory. So whenever there is a need of ELF loader, by default it should be maintained as a mapped with respect to its header and separate regions, which is mapped already. Consider the situation. Here is a diagram for ELF programs. So with respect to memory layout of for ELF, extensible or executable linking file format, kernel virtual memory has stack, memory mapped region, runtime data, initialized data, program text. So now consider one by one. For every ELF programs, executable and linkable file formats, there should be a kernel virtual memory should be allocated by the paging mechanism, page allocator. Then there should be a stack, the length in which the file should be executed, the way in which file should be executed, or the corresponding file should be executed one by one. And for each ELF files, there is a need of memory. So that memory mapped region over here. So what this memory mapped region will have? So whatever the memory needed for the commands, whatever the commands that we have in this ELF program, so that is loaded over here, which is related with the system calls, which is related with the display functions, which is related with some other faults, like page faults, all those things. Then you have a runtime data. If there is a need of data, runtime data from the user, uninitialized data loaded separately, initialized data loaded separately, program text. So nothing but ELF program will have this kind of structure where program text is kept separately, initialized data, uninitialized runtime data has been kept separately. Then we will have a break pointer. Then memory mapped region. So for all these data, there should be a link. For example, the path in which the data is handled in the particular program executable file. So for that reason we have this memory mapped region as well. So this is maintained as a stack. Then we have kernel virtual memory to execute the particular program, memory invisible to user mode code. So this part is not visible. So that is how ELF program is situated in the memory. So any doubt, any clarification so far?